I grew up in a small Florida town and never imagined my life would take so many unexpected turns. My childhood was typical, filled with neighborhood play and homework. I was particularly fascinated by airplanes. I joined the Marines right after high school. My time as an avionics technician at El Toro Marine Corps Air Station in California was both challenging and rewarding. It was a great experience that set me up for my future career. After leaving the Marines, I moved to Pittsburgh to go to college and study software engineering. I met Kay on a blind date. She was really friendly and kind, and I was immediately drawn to her. She was a nurse with a caring nature, and we got married and had 2 sons, John and Robert. Robert, today was the first day of our Southern California vacation. We just got back from Knott's Berry Farm, a place I remembered from my Marine days. It was a great day, full of laughter, and we decided to unwind by the pool. Life seemed perfect. Kay and I had rewarding careers, a beautiful home, 2 cars, and our wonderful sons. Despite the ups and downs in our marriage, we always managed to work through our problems. I felt incredibly fortunate, not realizing this would be our last weekend together as a family. Let me introduce myself. I'm Shane McCon, 39, a lead software developer at an aerospace firm specializing in avionics for military and commercial aircraft. After 4 years as an avionics technician, I joined the firm 13 years ago. I met Kay shortly after moving to Pittsburgh. She's 3 years younger and a nurse at a large medical clinic. We fell in love, got married, and bought a house on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. We have 2 sons, John, 10, and Robert, 8. Kay convinced me to have a vasectomy after Robert was born, which I wasn't too keen on at first. We had good jobs, a nice house, 2 cars, and an active life, despite the typical ups and downs of marriage. We always managed to sort things out straight away. I had no idea my world was about to collapse, marking our last weekend together as a family. I was watching Kay put on her new bikini and I thought she looked great. I joked that we should forget the pool and stay there to warm the bed instead. She laughed, playfully slapped my arm and sent me to check on the boys. Our site was more like a small apartment, with 2 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom and a kitchenette. The boys slept in one room and Kay and I slept in the other. Once we'd made sure the boys were ready, we headed to the pool. I noticed Kay was absorbed in her phone. She just shook her head when I asked her anything. It seemed like she was updating our relatives. Kay's family lived in Pittsburgh, while mine were retired in Florida. After playing in the water with the boys, I got out and dried off. A tall, clean-shaven man around 30 approached us. He had short dark hair and wore shorts and a t-shirt. Dan introduced himself and shook our hands. He asked if I minded if he joined us, sitting next to Kay. There were plenty of free chairs, so I wondered why he chose ours before I sat down. He handed us a business card, showing he was an account manager for Acme Medical Supplies, based in Columbus, Ohio. It's about 3 hours from us. Isn't Acme one of the companies your clinic uses? I asked Kay, recalling their vehicles outside her clinic. She nodded yes, it's one of several we use. Turning to Dan, I asked, have you ever been to Pittsburgh? Dan nodded yes, about every 2 or 3 weeks. My territory covers Columbus. I asked him what brought him to Pittsburgh. He said he was there for a conference that was starting that weekend. I learned that Dan lived with his wife and 2 daughters in Zanesville, a town along Interstate 70 between Columbus and Pittsburgh. He described himself as a happily married man, joking about living in a house full of women. Kay said, Shane can only produce boys. Dan spent time with us, even playing water volleyball with me and the boys. He seemed nice, and nothing between him and Kay seemed concerning, but I was on high alert. We decided it was time for dinner, and Dan said goodbye, hoping to see us again. We enjoyed our evening meal and headed to our room. Can you believe it? Kay said in the bedroom, maybe Dan will get me the girl I've always wanted. I said, don't even joke about that. Remember, it was your idea. I had surgery after Robert was born, and I won't tolerate any cheating. She said she was just kidding and that she loved me too. I replied that there was nothing funny about what she'd said, but I thought I saw a flash of guilt on her face. Her face was a little troubled, but I might have been reading too much into it. After spending some time in the common area, we sent the boys to bed and headed to our room. When I was ready for bed, Kay said she couldn't sleep and asked if I minded her going for a late-night swim. I don't mind, I replied. Do you want me to join you? She said that someone has to stay with the boys, so I said that I wouldn't be long and left our third-floor room, which overlooked the pool. I set up my camera on a tripod to take candid shots of Kay, who entered the pool area, swam, and then sat on a lounge chair. Dan arrived, still in shorts and a t-shirt. She was wearing a shirt, and they chatted. She seemed to glance at our room, but I knew she couldn't see me in the dark. Then she leaned over and kissed him. I tried to zoom in, but they got up and left together, and I lost sight of them. Had she really cheated on me with someone we just met? Her phone was on the dresser, and I considered I'd check my phone but decided against it, not wanting to invade her privacy. I waited, but Kay didn't return. 2 hours later, she came in smelling different in a way I couldn't pinpoint. It's about time you came back, I said. I saw you leave the pool hours ago, she replied. Sorry, she said. Dan came down and we talked for a while, then we went to a restaurant for drinks and lost track of time. She lied. I thought I knew what my partner smells like and she didn't have any on her breath. I suddenly felt nauseous. I rushed to the bathroom, locked the door and threw up. My partner, Kay, knocked on the door and asked if I was okay. I said I was washing my face and sitting. I wondered why she was doing this to us. Was our whole marriage a sham? Were the boys even mine? I sat there overwhelmed with thoughts. Kay knocked again. Do you need a doctor? No, I'll be out soon. I replied after cleaning up. I returned to the bedroom, avoiding her. We lay down, and for the first time, I didn't kiss her. Good night, I love you, she said quietly. I didn't respond. I thought I heard her sob, but I didn't care. The next morning, I got up exhausted from a night of nightmares about Kay and Dan. I didn't tell Kay anything as I got ready. I had promised the kids the trip to Disneyland, and nothing would make me break that promise, I told her as we got ready for the day. I feel like crap, I said. Maybe you should stay here, she suggested. No, I said. I promised the boys Disneyland and I'm not breaking my promise. She stayed silent, but I could see her recoiling. We went downstairs for breakfast, saying little to each other. Dan joined us at the table, sitting between Kay and me. I thought I saw him smirk, and Kay smiled at him. So, what's on your agenda? He asked. We're going to Disneyland, Kay said. Mind if I come along? What about your convention? I asked, trying to sound neutral. Oh, it's just boring seminars, he said. I've heard it all before. Well, Dan, I think Shane wanted a family outing. Kay said, looking at me. That's right. I said I promised my family a day at Disneyland. Family is the most important thing. He said. Too bad you didn't think of that last night. I thought, have a good time. Dan said, standing up, as we left. I thought I saw him signal Kay. What you've got into him, Kay said on the bus to Disneyland. You were so cold to Dan. I could ask the same of you, dear wife. I said, emphasizing wife. Or I could ask who attacked you, Shane. That's not nice. She said, pouting. Please. I said sarcastically. Let's just have a good day for the boys. Okay. She said. I don't know. What's got you so upset? I'm sorry. Normally I would have hugged and kissed her, but not this time. After last night, I didn't want to touch her. She leaned back, frustrated. I hope you won't be mad for the rest of our vacation, she said. I looked at her, but didn't respond. We spent the day and I made sure the boys had a good time at Disneyland. I mostly ignored Kay, but I tried to be polite for the boys' sake. I saw her texting a lot. Was she texting Dan? I thought that after lunch, the tired family got back on the bus. I looked at Kay. So, did you have a good day? She nodded. Yeah, but it would have been better if you'd talked to me. I apologized. I said I was still not feeling well after last night. Maybe you should get a good night's sleep. She suggested that. I thought sarcastically. As if sleep will fix your cheating. We rode in silence and had lunch back at the hotel in our room. I apologize for being so difficult. Let's put the kids to bed and enjoy some private time. I'd love to, but I just got my period. She said her last period ended before we left Pittsburgh. Well, I'm tired. I think I'll go to bed. She said she was going to the pool. I watched her leave. I set up my camera to catch them together, and sure enough, they met at the pool. I got clear photos and video of them. They left together, and I was sure they were heading to his room. I sat on the bed wondering what to do. Then I saw her purse and phone on the dresser. I unlocked her phone using our son's. On her birthday, I looked through her messages and saw what was going on. She and Dan had been in a serious relationship for a year. He was the Acme rep at her clinic and visited every other week. Recently, she decided he should get her pregnant with a girl. They planned this vacation so they could be together. Dan's wife knew. They'd planned for Dan to bump into us at the pool and for Kay to spend every night with him. She'd even agreed to turn me down all week in their messages. Dan asked what she'd tell her husband. She replied, I'll say I'm getting my period. He won't come near me. Dan texted, but she hadn't replied yet. She wrote, Hugh knows when you get pregnant, he thinks the boys are his too. I took a DNA test and I'll email it to you. Why stay with him? He's a good provider and great with the kids. I don't have to worry about that. Dan asked, Do you know who the real fathers are? She replied, An old boyfriend is JK's father and the doctor I used to work for is Robert. You're something else, he said. I hope he never finds out, she assured him. If he divorces me, I'll destroy him financially and keep him away from the boys. You're cold, he said. She agreed. In the morning, she texted Dan. He hardly spoke to me. Maybe he's figured it out, Dan said. No, she replied. He thinks it's something he ate. Are we still on for tonight? Yes, he replied. See you at the pool. I'll be there. Back around 8 in the morning, she said. Then you have me all night. He wants to take us to the tar pits. Boring. Okay, see you tonight. He said. See you later, lover. She replied. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. At least, that's what people say. She had lied to me for all these years and robbed me of a real family. I needed to find out about the DNA test she mentioned, so I searched her email. Sure enough, there it was. It wasn't in a folder labeled stuff. The test dated 1.5 years ago and showed that both boys had different fathers. I was furious. I forwarded the document to my email and searched her other emails. There were explicit messages and photos from Dan and other men dating back 8 years. I forwarded those too. I rummaged through her purse and found birth control pills. Why would she need these if I had a vasectomy, so I was pretty sure she was seeing Dan. I found her day planner with DK written on several days, which I figured was when she saw him. There was also a note to stop taking birth control pills and no S on the same day. She must have stopped taking birth control and cut me off to save herself for Dan. I photographed the planner and pills and put everything back. Then I had a brainwave. At work, we use an app to track all activity on an employee's phone if we suspect them of passing on trade secrets. I set up a similar account to monitor Kay's phone. I could access everything from my phone, tablet, or computer. I also installed an app to record her phone conversations and another to track her phone's location. I knew this wouldn't hold up in court, but I felt justified. I decided to get the boys and myself away from Kay. I called the airline and booked a flight to Pittsburgh, leaving before midnight. I then called Kay's parents, her mom Julie. I said, "Hi, Mom. I need a big favor. Is everything okay?" "Not really. I'm bringing the kids home tonight. Can they stay with you for a week?" "I'll explain when I get there." "Is there something wrong between you and Kay?" "I'll explain later. Please don't say anything to Kay." "I promise." She said she'd packed her bags and woke the boys. "Get up, guys, we need to pack and leave now." They looked scared and tired. "What's going on?" John asked. "It's an emergency. We're going home. You'll stay with your grandparents for the week." "Where's Mom?" Robert asked. "Isn't she coming?" John said, "She's with Dan." I looked at him, surprised. "How do you know that?" I asked. "She's been texting him all day," he said. "I remember seeing her on the phone," I said. "Yeah, come on, we're leaving in a few minutes," he said. I helped him pack and wrote a note for Kay. "Kay, you weren't here when we got up, so I left the kids with their grandparents for the day. I might be late, so see you later." I wondered if Kay would notice that I hadn't left any messages or gifts, but I didn't care. She'd probably read the note and head straight back to Dan. We grabbed our luggage and checked out. I informed the night manager that my wife was still in the hotel. I didn't know how long she'd be staying in the room. "I hope you enjoyed your stay." "Thank you, I did too." The boys were fast asleep, but I was wide awake, doing some research on Pennsylvania divorce laws. It's a no-fault state, but infidelity can affect proceedings. I would likely have to pay child support, but the evidence of her infidelity might help. I knew I needed a good lawyer, so I planned to ask Cliff, my father. "I'll get back to you on that." I used an app to find a lawyer. I checked Kay's phone, which had all its contents saved. I didn't want to look at everything again, so I looked for Dan's address and phone number instead. I found it in Zanesville. Then I tried to get some sleep. I woke up as the plane was landing in Pittsburgh. We got off the plane, picked up our bags, and went to the car. I called Cliff and Julie to let them know. Once we were on our way, they greeted us warmly and brought us inside. "What's going on, son?" Julie asked. "I thought everything was okay between you and Kay." "I thought so too," I said, "but I found out it was all a lie." "What do you mean?" Cliff asked. I showed them the DNA test from Kay's emails and her messages with Dan. "Oh my God," Julie said. "How could she be so stupid?" "I'm sorry, Shane. I thought she outgrew that after marrying you." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Kay was wild in her younger years," Julie explained. "It started in high school and got worse in college. She was constantly dating different guys. She was even engaged once, but broke it off." "She never told you about this," I replied. "Yeah, it was during college," Julie continued. "She was engaged to a guy named Mike Jacko. They went to high school together. She pulled out as she showed me a photo album, and there was a picture of Kay and Mike at prom. I said, 'Mike looks a lot like JN.' I showed the picture to Julie and Cliff. They agreed that Mike looked like JN. Julie said, 'I think you're right. They look very similar.' Cliff nodded. He said, 'They look alike.' Cliff said, 'Do you think he could be Junk's biological father?' I said, 'It looks like it to me, but a DNA test would prove it.' 'Is this guy still around?' Julie asked. 'Yes,' I replied. 'His family owns a deli here. He makes the best pastrami. He probably still works there.' She wrote down the name and location of the deli and handed it to me. 'I'll have to visit him.' I turned to Cliff. 'Can you recommend a good divorce lawyer?' 'Yes,' he replied. 'Are you sure you want to pursue this?' 'Absolutely. Kay has lied to me for 13 years, and now she's cheating with some salesman in California.' 'I understand. You've been good to her and I consider you a son, but she's my daughter and I still love her. Do what you need to do, but promise me one thing. What's that? Promise you won't physically hurt her. I promise. Thank you. I'll see you at dinner. I'll be here tonight with the kids, so let's talk in detail. I'll be here, I said. He handed me a business card. Marian Hawkins, it read. The best, she's the manager at the office. Call her early Monday. Thanks, I said. I'll see you tonight. Please don't let Kay know we're here. Mom's the word, Julie said. We said goodbye and I hugged the boys, promising to come back tonight. I left and headed home without Kay. The house felt dark and empty everywhere I looked, reminding me of happier times that were now tainted by her lies. I wiped away tears and vowed never to cry over Kay again. Looking in the bathroom mirror, I realized I hadn't slept properly in almost 2 days. I looked terrible, so I brushed my teeth and crawled under the covers, falling asleep almost immediately. I walked into our hotel room at 8, it's 10 p.m. On Sunday, I was hoping to see my husband and boys after how Shane treated me the day before. I was nervous, but thankfully I had showered before leaving Dan's room to avoid Shane smelling anything suspicious. I opened the door expecting the usual morning noise from Shane and our restless boys, but it was silent. I was worried. I went to the bedroom and found a note on the dresser. You weren't here when we got up, so I took the kids out for the day. I might be late. See you later. It was short and to the point, typical of Shane. It lacked his usual affectionate words. He was probably still upset about Friday night. I decided not to call or text. It wouldn't help. Given his mood, and besides, I wasn't interested in seeing the tar pits anyway, I saw my phone on the dresser, unlocked it and noticed the Messenger app was open. That seemed odd to me, as I usually close my apps. I dialed Dan's number. Hey love, I said when he answered. Shane and the boys left early and might be back late tonight. I'm free. Dan asked if he'd left already. I said yes, he got tired of waiting for me. Oh well, his loss. I'll meet you downstairs for breakfast, then we can hit the pool and have some fun. We'll do lover, he said. I can't wait. I grabbed a few things from the dresser and left. The clock showed 1:30 p.m. When I woke up, I realized I was more tired than I thought. I got up, wiped my eyes and headed to the bathroom. It was Sunday, so I couldn't do much with the lawyer, but I had one crucial task. I checked my phone and saw that Kay hadn't texted or called. I guessed she'd spent the day with Dan after showering and dressing. I checked her phone activity on my tablet and saw that she'd called a number with a 740 area code, which was Dan's area. I saw that she'd planned to spend the day and night with him. Her tracker showed she was still at the hotel. I found the deli where Mike Jack worked and headed there. I found him behind the counter wearing a name tag that said Mike. He'd put on weight since high school, but I recognized him. Are you Mike Jack? I asked. Depends on who you are, he said, smiling. A bill collector? I laughed. No, he said. I'm Shane McKnight. Nice to meet you, I said. Nice to meet you, he replied. What can I do for you? I asked, do you know Kay Williams? Yeah, I do, he replied. Back in high school and college, I heard she got married. Yes, I said. 13 years ago. His smile vanished. Weren't you engaged to her once? Yes, he said. But I caught her with another man, so I broke it off. You took her to the prom, right? Yes, he replied. She was pretty wild back then. I hoped she'd settle down, but I guess not. Did you see her about 11 years ago? She asked me to get her pregnant, saying her husband liked it. Not exactly, I said, pointing at his wedding band. I wasn't married yet. Then he said he'd met his wife 6 months later. Did you hear from Kay after that? I asked. She said she'd had a baby boy named J.N. He showed me a picture of John, who looked just like him. "What do you want from me? Would you testify in court?" I asked. "Would you do that?" He said. "She played both of us. Would you undergo a DNA test to confirm you're Junk's father? Are you coming to me for support?" He asked nervously. "No," I said. "I don't know what the court will decide. I've been raising John for 10 years. He thought for a moment. "Okay," he said. "What do I need to do?" I pulled out a cotton swab. "I just need to take a swab of your cheek." He opened his mouth and I swabbed his cheek, then put the swab in a marked bag and pocketed it. "There's something else." I said. "What?" "I'll have a pound of your pastrami, please." "I'll pay for it." He smiled and said, "You have good taste. We make the best pastrami in the state, so I've heard." I took a bite and said, "This is the best pastrami I've ever tasted." "I'll add a sandwich for you at no extra charge," he said. "Sounds good," I replied. "Mike," he said, "I haven't had lunch yet." He weighed a pound of meat, bagged it, and made a sandwich, wrapping it in paper. I thanked him and paid for the pastrami. I said, "Thanks for your honesty. I'll see you around." "See you, Shane." I left, and on my way home, I ate the sandwich. I had another important task, so I put the meat in the fridge and finished the sandwich on my tablet. I checked Kay's phone activity and saw no new messages. She didn't even care where we were. I went through her emails again and found exchanges with Dr. Winstead, who performed my vasectomy. He asked if she had talked to me about it. "Yes, I have," she answered. I agreed. "Good," he replied. "I'll take care of it myself. He won't be able to have kids when I'm done." "Why don't you want kids with him? Have you looked at him?" "No way," she responded. I couldn't believe what I was reading. She and the doctor conspired to make me infertile while making me believe I was doing it for her. I copied incriminating emails, photos, and videos onto a flash drive for the divorce. I discovered she had affairs with at least 5 other men after Dr. Winstead left the clinic. These happened while she was away for work 3 or 4 times a year. Then she met Dan and things changed dramatically. Dan and his wife were in a club and wanted Kay and me involved. I declined on her behalf and they kept the affair going. I wondered how I hadn't noticed. How long would this have continued if I hadn't found out? I had always told the boys that honesty was best. Even if it hurt, one day I'd have to tell them. I thought, damn her. I realized I had to leave soon for dinner with the boys and my in-laws. I showered again, feeling pretty dirty after reading Kay's emails at home. I rang the doorbell and Cliff let me in. The boys were all over me. I love those boys so much and wish I was their biological father. We had dinner and then moved to the family room. Dad John said, "Are you and Mom getting a divorce?" I nodded. "I'm afraid so," he said. "Son, did I do something?" I asked, tears in my eyes. I pulled him close. "No, you didn't do anything," I said. "You're both the best. Sons are anyone could wish for, so why don't you love Mom anymore?" It's hard to explain. I said sometimes parents go through things that can't be fixed, but I love you and will always be there for you. I hugged both boys and told them everything would be okay, but they knew things would never be the same. I said, "Go upstairs and get ready for bed. I need to talk to Grandma and Grandpa." They said, "Okay," and left the room. I spent the next hour telling Cliff and Julie everything. I showed them all the messages, emails, photos, and videos I had. They were really angry at their daughter for what she'd done, but they still watched the videos. It seems like she's been doing this our entire marriage. I told them that explains what happened last summer. Julie said, "What do you mean?" I asked her, "What did you do last summer when you were at Edwards for a week?" Kay brought the boys over saying she had a girl's birthday party at her office and might stay late. We didn't see her again until Sunday afternoon. I remembered that I had to oversee software testing and was gone for a week. I found emails from that time between Kay, Dan, and Alicia revealing she spent the week with them. I showed the emails to Cliff and Julie. Cliff said, "You deserve better." He added, "You've been a wonderful husband and father." I apologized to Cliff for involving him in this, but I can't stay with Kay. I called Marin, who said she can see me at 7 o'clock. I'll be there tomorrow morning at 7:30. I'll bring everything, including the financial documents. Marion is the best. Just don't do anything stupid. I won't. I promise. What about the biological fathers? I met Mike today. He's a nice guy and was honest. I'm not sure about Dr. Winstead, though. He's a bit of a know-it-all. I'd like to see you keep him on. I laughed. I'd like that too, realizing I had a lot to do. I told them I'd better get going. I'd like to say good night to the boys. That's a great idea, Julie said. I went upstairs and hugged the boys. I told them I loved them and that I'd see them soon. I said good night to Cliff and Julie and went home. I gathered all our financial information, printed it out, and put it in a folder with the incriminating emails. I copied pictures and videos onto a flash drive. I checked Kay's phone one last time and saw no activity, so I called it a day. I couldn't believe she hadn't texted to check on the boys. The next day, I got up early, saw that Kay still hadn't texted or called, showered, shaved, dressed, and headed to Marion's office. I met her at 7:30. "Mr. McKnight," she said. "Please call me Shane." "You must be Miss Hawkins." "It's Mrs. Hawkins, but you can call me Marin." "I see you got your father-in-law's message." "I did." "You were the best," she said. "My secretary won't be here for another half hour. Let me get us coffee, and we'll start." "Sounds good." She made us coffee and escorted me to her office. "Your father-in-law said you want a divorce. Is that true?" "I understand you want a divorce. Is that correct?" "Yes, it is." "Good. Please tell me what's going on. I've provided you with all the relevant information, including emails, texts, a DNA form, and a thumb drive with photos and videos. You haven't heard from her since you left California. Court, you've identified the biological fathers. I mentioned my meeting with Mike and said that it seems like divorce isn't about justice, but about money. Mothers almost always get custody, and fathers pay child and spousal support. Assets are split in half, and the custodian usually gets the house. Pennsylvania is a no-fault state, but infidelity can be grounds for divorce. Is that what you want? Yes, we need to prove it to a judge, but you have a strong case. We can ask that spousal support not be awarded, but you might still pay alimony depending on many factors. Even if I'm not the biological father, I raised the children for 10 years. You said the junior father is Dr. Robert Winstead. I replied, realizing my youngest son was named after his real father, H.E.K., the one who gave you the vasectomy. Marin asked, and I confirmed it was significant. She said it was probably relevant, and I'll work on that. In the meantime, I'll draft a petition for her to get physical custody, but it looks like the court will probably decide that you have joint custody. I'll also ask for minimal child support and no spousal support. We'll offer her the option to buy out your half of the house. The court might order counseling. Are you interested? No, I said. She lied from the start and took away my chance for a family. Nothing will make me reconcile. I understand, she said, but the judge might still order it. Just be aware. I nodded. What about DNA testing? I asked. We have your wife's test results, but additional testing could be helpful. Go ahead if you want. We discussed more and she gave me a list of steps to protect myself financially. Then she asked, when do you want the papers served? I said, as soon as possible. You said the hotel room in California is booked through Friday. Yes, but she can return any time. She probably doesn't know I've left. We'll serve her at the airport if she comes back early. Call me if I don't answer. Leave a message. In the meantime, don't do anything rash. Stay strong for your boys. Thank you, I said. Is there anything else I can help with? Just give me a shout if you hear from her. I will. How much do I owe you? I blushed at the amount, but knew it was necessary. I wrote a check, handed it to her, and left feeling a bit better. I still hated Kay, but at least I was taking action on the way home. I went to the bank and followed Marion's advice. I withdrew half the money and opened a new account in my name, then paid off and closed the joint credit cards and ordered one for myself. Kay had her own card, which I also paid from our joint account. By the time I got home, it was almost 11. It's 8 a.m. It was 8 a.m. in California, so I figured if Kay was going to call, it would be soon. On Monday, I went to our hotel room, not knowing what to expect. I hadn't heard from Shane the day before, and I was concerned about the boys. I knew they were safe with him, but it would have been nice to hear something. I unlocked the door, but the room was eerily quiet. Where were they? I called out, but there was no answer. The boys' beds were made, and their clothes and toys were gone. I ran to our room and saw that Shane's stuff was gone too. The note he left on Saturday was still on the dresser, untouched. I realized he knew everything. I called him. Hi Shane, I said. It's me. Where are you? Are the boys okay? What's going on? Like you care. He replied angrily, Of course I care. I love you and miss you. Is that why you waited 36 hours to contact me? You were too busy with Dan to notice we weren't there. What are you talking about? I knew the boys were safe with you. You hate using your phone. You spent the day and night with your buddy. Don't lie to me. I know everything. What do you mean everything? I've had a DNA test done and the boys aren't mine. I know who their fathers are and I know you've been trying to keep me from having children. You lied throughout our marriage, even this vacation was an excuse to be with Dan. Shane, it's not what you think. I was trying to deflect you. I have to tell you that you're trying to stop me from seeing my family. This is the end. I've already spoken to a lawyer about getting a divorce. Shane, please, I don't want a divorce. I don't care what you want. Please, let me come home so we can talk this out. There's nothing to settle. The room is paid for through Friday, so you can stay there. You'll get the papers when you return. I canceled your joint credit and debit cards, but you still have your personal card. Shane, please. I started, but he hung up. I stared at the phone, contemplating whether to call back, but decided against it. The more I thought about what he said, the angrier I got. Yes, I had cheated many times. I was wild and thought marriage would change that. I stayed faithful for the first 2 years, but then I let my fiancée Mike got me pregnant. I never really wanted kids with Shane. He wasn't ugly, but he wasn't Brad Pitt either. I kept my affair secret. I waited until Shane was away on business trips after John was born. I had more lovers and made sure Shane didn't find out I had an affair with Dr. Winstead, who got me pregnant with Robert. I named Robert after his real father, who wanted nothing to do with him. Dr. Winstead suggested Shane get a vasectomy and convinced Shane to get one too. He believed my lie and agreed. After Robert was born, I kept dating other men, as long as Shane didn't find out. I thought everything would be okay. But then I met Mac. His real name is Mac, but everyone calls him that. We slept together a few times, and then he made me a very lucrative offer. Everything we did was for cash, and I managed to save a good amount. I decided to keep it as a backup in case Shane ever left me. Some of what I did for Mac was illegal, but he assured me everything would be fine if I stayed calm. At the time, I verified through a DNA test that neither of the boys were Shane's. I was pleased with the results and kept the document for future use. I knew I'd eventually have to tell Shane the truth, and I didn't care about his reaction. What could he do? I felt it was my right to choose the father of my children. Shane was extremely upset when he found out. We'd been through a lot over the years, and I didn't think this should be any different. I never thought he'd go through with the divorce. He always deferred to me until Friday night, when he called me a promiscuous woman, which made me furious. I am promiscuous, but how dare he call me that? I'll show him what a real promiscuous woman can do. I started putting together a plan, but then I was worried that if Shane really knew everything, I could end up in jail. I called my contact McGregor. A male voice answered, "Hi, it's Kay. How's California getting on?" "Oh, great. We've got a problem." "Shane knows," I said. "He knows everything," he replied. "Crap," I said. "I've just finished talking to Kay," Max said. "I've had enough of her scams." I checked the app I'd installed on her phone. The phone had downloaded the audio file and transcript of the conversation she was having with a number in Pittsburgh registered to someone named Mac. Once the conversation ended, I waited for the app to copy the files to the cloud. Once they were available, I printed the transcript and played the audio. McGregor said, a male voice. Kay replied, "It's me." "Hi, Kay. How's California getting a good tan?" "Yeah, fun." She answered, "We've got a problem. Shane knows he knows everything." Mac asked, "Yes, and it has to be done by Thursday night." "Why Thursday?" "I'm sending him something tonight. He'll be upset and probably won't defend himself. Also, I'll be here until Friday, and he'll likely serve divorce papers when I return." "Divorce?" Mac asked. "Yes, he found out about me and is preparing divorce papers." "What are you going to do to upset him?" "He thinks I'm a strumpet. I'm going to show him what promiscuous I really am." Mac laughed. "You are a promiscuous woman, aren't you?" she giggled. "Yeah, but he doesn't know how much it has to look like a home invasion, does he? Does he have a weapon in the house?" "No, he wanted one, but I never allowed it." "What about the boys?" "I don't want them hurt, but there can't be witnesses." "I understand. What's in it for me?" "Shane has $1 million life insurance policy, and his employer has a $500,000 policy. I'll give you $100,000. "That's a lot." "Make it $250,000. "Okay, so you want me to eliminate your husband and possibly your boys for $250,000. You want it done on Thursday night, with the whole thing looking like a home invasion. I want you to handle it yourself. I know you've done it before. I understand this is risky, but I want to celebrate when you get back. Together, D-Day. Yes, the day Shane dies." They laughed. "I've got to go. I won't call until I get back." "Don't worry. I'll act like a distraught widow." "Okay, I'll text you when it's ready." "I can't wait. Talk later." "Bye," he said, ending the call. I sat there stunned. Kay had promised $250,000. I don't understand why they want to get rid of me and possibly the boys on Thursday. Who is this McGregor guy? Is he a cop? What are they hiding? I sent the audio file and transcript to Marian's email and called her. She answered on the second ring. Marian Hawkins said, "Marian, this is Shane McKnight. I've sent you the files. There's a guy named McGregor who plotted to eliminate me and the boys this Thursday." What she asked shocked me. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I sent the audio and transcript." "How did you get them?" "Never mind, explain later. I'm heading to the office. I'll clear my calendar. Call the DA and my private investigator." I was on my way to meet the investigator when I got a call from Marian. She said there were 2 men with her who wanted to see the transcript. Marian introduced them as Bill Rollins, her private investigator, and Ryan Jacobs, an assistant DA. Ryan asked how I got the transcript. I told him about the apps I installed on Kay's phone to archive her data, including emails, texts, videos, photos, and calls. I decrypted and saved them in the cloud. Ryan said he wasn't sure we could use it as evidence in court because of how it was obtained. I told him, "Look, Mr. Jacobs, I'll give you access to everything I have so you can review it. I just need to talk to my boss about it first. The phones and services are in my name, and I pay the bills. That's why I only use my phone for calls. Would you be willing to testify under oath?" "Absolutely." I shook my head. I wasn't directly involved. Kay had an affair with him a couple of years ago. Judging by her emails, he even sent her pictures and videos. He said, "I logged into the cloud account where Kay's phone data was archived in the stuff folder. I found emails with a long video showing Kay and McGregor. We watched until we could see his face." "Who's that?" Bill said. "I know him," I replied. "He's Alfred McGregor." "He's a police captain in Pittsburgh?" Ryan asked. "I think so," Bill said. "Can you print this out?" Ryan asked. "Print this out," he said to Marin. She connected the laptop to her printer and soon had a color picture of McGregor with Kay. Ryan looked at me and said, "Can you give me access to all this information?" I replied, "Do you have a laptop?" He nodded, opened his bag, and connected to Marion's Wi-Fi. I've set it up to monitor everything. I think we should put Mr. McKnight in protective custody until this is sorted out." Ryan said to Marin, "No way. She said he has 2 boys to take care of and putting him in custody could be a death sentence. I won't let McGregor get to him. I have a couple of guys who can guard him." Bill said, "Do it." Marin said. Ryan looked at me. "Do you know why they want to eliminate you?" I showed them emails between Kay and Alfred. I showed him the emails between Kay and Alfred. He said, "Oh my God." Then he asked, "Is our office working with the Pill and Booze Administration on prescription pills on the black market?" I told him we hadn't found the source yet. He asked, "Where does your wife work?" I told him about her clinic. He said, "Do you think my wife is involved?" I asked, "That's what these emails suggest. McGregor might be involved too. If your wife thinks you know, she'll want you out of the way." He turned to Marin. "Are you sure you don't want your client in protective custody? That would make it easier for McGregor to get him." She asked. "No, I want McGregor behind bars immediately. We need to get internal affairs involved and start an investigation. He's a police captain, not a rookie. It'll take time, and we don't have time for political nonsense." Marin said, "By the time you go through the proper channels, my client could be dead. We know McGregor plans to act on Thursday, which is less than 3 days away. What do you want me to do?" Ryan asked. "Call him." "Your boss is on his way back to his car," Ryan said. "Call him and put him on speakerphone." Ryan called his boss and put the phone on speaker. Giles answered, "Boss, this is Ryan Jacobs. I'm with Marion Hawkins and her client. We have a problem. Can't it wait until I get back?" Ryan looked at Marin, who smirked. "Not exactly," Marin said. "We have evidence that a police captain is involved in a liquidation for hire and pill distribution scheme." "Who is this captain?" Giles asked. "McGregor," Ryan replied. "No way, he's a top officer." "I can't believe it." "We have compelling evidence." Ryan said, "What kind of recorded phone conversation and incriminating emails?" Ryan said, "Crap." Giles said, "We don't have time for politics." Marin said, "The liquidation is planned for Thursday night and involves children." Giles said, "You already said that." Marin said, "What are you going to do?" Ryan said, "I'll let Jenkins cover for me. I need you to work for a few days, focus on this, and bring me a solid case in 48 hours. Can you do that?" "I can do it," Ryan said. "Just keep this to yourself," Giles said. "I'll inform the chief and alert IA if there's substance to this." We'll act quickly. Does that satisfy you, counselor? For now, Marin said. But if anything happens to my client or his kids, I'll make sure you regret it and your re-election will be in jeopardy. Don't worry, Marin. Gil said, I'll do my job. I hope so, she replied. I really hope so. Ryan gathered his gear. I better get started. We need a warrant for your wife's arrest. She's due back Friday. I nodded. Good. I'll arrange for the locals to pick her up. Can I have? He asked for my number so he could give me more information. I wrote down my number and address and handed it to him. He thanked me and put the paper in his pocket. He also said we'd need to search my house. He said he'd get a warrant and call me when we were ready. I said, understood, and he nodded, shook my hand, and left. Marin spoke up after Ryan left. He said this would change I said, it's an obvious divorce case. I apologized for my tone. I'm just really annoyed. It's okay, Shane. I'd be annoyed too. Do you want custody of the house? Yes. She won't be able to pay child support in jail. I agree. We'll figure it out. Go and take care of your kids. I will. System, yes, I said. What about security bars on the windows? No, I said, I never wanted them. I understand, but you should get them and armored doors now. I know a contractor who can install them. You can remove them later. Okay, I agreed. It might slow McGregor down. I'll assign someone to patrol outside your house and another inside. Bill said thanks and asked me to send people to check out McGregor's place. He said he'd recognize me. I said I'd do that. Bill said to live your life as usual, but to be extra observant. Thanks, I will. I said I'd let Marin know immediately if I heard from Kay or McGregor. I said I would. I promised before heading home. I visited Cliff and Julie's house for dinner and I went over to see the boys. Julie had lasagna ready. Cliff and I had a chat while I ate. What's the word? Shane asked. I told him about the threat. He shook his head at the phone conversation between Kay and McGregor. Well, the boys are safe here. Do you have a weapon? He inquired. No, I answered. Kay wouldn't let me buy one. Nonsense, he said. He came back with a 12-gauge rifle. Do you know how to use this? I asked. I was in the Marines, I replied. My dad has a similar rifle. Good, said Cliff. It's loaded with rock salt. Not lethal, but it'll sting. Take it and use it if needed. Thanks, I said. Anytime. I'm sorry about all this, Cliff said. It's not your fault. Look, I told him. I'm sorry about all this. You didn't make her do it. I just don't know how to explain it to the boys. Explain what Dad John asked from the doorway. I gestured for him to come over and hugged him tightly. John, I've never lied to you and I won't start now. You may hear bad things about your mother soon. I said gently, she cheated on you, didn't she? I nodded, unsure how to break the news to the kids that their mom had been unfaithful. Yes, son, she cheated. I hate her, he wailed. No, son, don't say that. She's done bad things and she'll pay for them, but she's still your mother. But you hate her, he accused. I can tell, I replied. How do you explain that to a 10-year-old? I'm 10 years old. The truth was, he was right. I hated her with every fiber of my being. It's different, son. I told him what your mother did was meant to hurt me, but if she hurt you, she hurt Robbie and me too. He asked, and he was right. She's hurting all of us. I said she doesn't fully realize it yet, but she will in time. John wrapped his arms around me and cried. I love you, son. I said I love you too, Daddy. He replied. I held him for a long time, then my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. "We're ready to search your house, Mr. McKnight." He said, "Thanks, Ryan. I'm on my way." I replied that I had to go home. Robert had come into the room by then, so I hugged both boys, kissed them goodbye, and shook Cliff's hand. Julie hugged me at the door, and I promised to update them soon. I left with the rifle when I got home. Bill's contractors were finishing the security bars and armored doors. The foreman handed me the keys, and I signed the paperwork and paid with my credit card. The iron bars looked better than I expected, but I wasn't sure I wanted to. I kept them permanently. I walked into the house, unloaded the rifle, and set it in the home office. I put the shell casings in the desk drawer and kept the barrel open. Soon after Ryan and a few officers arrived, one introduced himself as a DEA agent. Ryan showed me a search warrant, and they began searching carefully, returning everything to its place. After an hour, someone called from upstairs. They'd found something. An officer said, "I'll show you." I followed Ryan to the craft and sewing room. The closet door was open, revealing a hidden cutout. Ryan and I looked at each other. He asked, "Did you know about this?" "No," I replied. "I stay out of this room out of respect for Kay." Ryan put on gloves and opened the first box, which contained pill bottles and sachets labeled Acme Medical. "Isn't that where your wife's boyfriend works?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. The DEA agent examined the pills. "These appear to be Schedule II controlled pills. We'll need to verify, but it looks like several types are here. We need to visit that clinic." Ryan agreed, opening the second box. Ryan and I found several wads of $100 bills. "It looks like your wife has been very busy. I'd estimate about 12 here." I was shocked. Inside the box was an envelope with a bank statement showing another $5 million in a savings account with regular deposits over the last year and a half. She's been structuring her deposits. "Did you know?" I said, "No idea." Ryan handed the boxes to a technician for fingerprint checks. He found Kay's laptop on her desk. "We need to confiscate this." He said, "I need to take this." Ryan found several folders of papers in a drawer and a mailbox key, which he bagged as evidence after searching more. He spoke to me privately and said, "Shane, we'll need to designate this room as a crime scene. We'll seal the door when we're done, and no one can enter until we're finished. Do what you need to do." I asked, "If we find his fingerprints, we'll have a strong case. Stay out of trouble and let us know if anything happens." "I will." A couple of hours later, everyone except Bill and one investigator left, carrying boxes of Kay's stuff. Bill then said that his guy saw McGregor at a mail store. He pulled out a bag and put what looked like a paper lunch bag in a mailbox. 10 minutes later, someone else picked up the bag. "We have pictures. The box is registered to McGregor. Did you tell Ryan?" He said, then he introduced the other man, Shane. "This is Peter Green. He'll stay with you tonight and accompany you everywhere. Another man will keep an eye on things outside." I shook Peter's hand. Peter is a former Navy SEAL. If anything happens, follow his lead. "Got it. Got it," I said. "Good," Bill said. "Have a good evening. Call me if anything happens." We said goodbye. I invited Peter to sit. I made coffee and ordered pizza. We spent the evening eating, watching TV, and swapping stories. Peter turned out to be a nice guy. Around 9:10 to midnight. At 4:15 a.m., I checked Kay's phone activity and found none. I grabbed my loaded rifle and went to bed, making sure Peter was set for the night. On Tuesday, I received an email alert from Daniel's address with a video attachment. I watched the video, which showed Kay with multiple men. She looked into the camera and said, "What do you think of your strumpet wife now, creep? My partner, Max, will eliminate you." The video was sent by Fred Friday. It was clear that she was trying to provoke a reaction. "I'll take your insurance money and live how I want." Screw you and your stupid family vacation. She laughed and raised both middle fingers, looking shocked. I sent the video to Marin and called her. She answered on the first ring, saying, "Good morning, Shane. Is everything okay?" I asked. "No," she replied, sounding sleepy. "I just got a video from Kay admitting to conspiring to eliminate me." "Yeah, it's shocking," I confirmed. "Come to my office at 7:30. "I'll be there," she said. I went back to bed, showered, shaved, and got dressed. I made coffee and offered a cup to Peter, who was already awake. I made breakfast and we watched the news while we ate. "I have a meeting with my lawyer early this morning." I said, "You have to come with me everywhere, right?" "That's what I was told." Peter replied, "Good. Do you need to freshen up already?" I grabbed a paper coffee. We left and went to Marian's office. She, Ryan, and Bill were there. Marian waved us in. "Good morning, Shane," she said. "Good morning," I replied. "Morning, Kurt," Ryan said. "Morning," I replied. "You look tired," I said. "We reviewed the video you got this morning," Marian said. "I agree it looks like a confession," Ryan said. "It does," I replied. "There's also a threat of child endangerment," Ryan added. I informed my boss. "What did he say?" I asked. "He agrees with my assessment," Ryan said. "The LA County Sheriff's Department got the arrest warrant last night, and the feds have a warrant for Dan's arrest. Kay and her lover will be picked up this morning. My office is expediting the extradition papers now." "That was fast," I remarked. "When there's a clear threat to kids, we act quickly." "Thanks to Bill's investigators," he said. "And the DEA has enough evidence to arrest McGregor. They're taking him from his apartment now. We made some progress." Then I asked, "Yes, Ryan confirmed McGregor had a criminal enterprise, which could mean a life sentence." "Why?" I asked. "Because," HEK explained, "HEK has a police captain, HEK is deep in debt, and Bill said his wife divorced him and took everything. HEK barely makes ends meet, paying alimony." Ryan checked his watch. "I'll let you know what happens," he said. "I've got to go. I haven't slept in 2 days. The feds are checking out clinics and are interested in your wife's lover. Give me a call if you hear anything." I nodded and shook his hand, thanking him. "This changes your divorce." Marin said the court won't let her take the kids, especially if she's in jail. "Let's wait and see what the court does before suing. As for the biological fathers, I've researched both. Mike Jacku has no real assets, but Dr. Winstead is different. I can start the paperwork and maybe negotiate with him. Would you like me to do that?" "Absolutely." "Good. Go home and rest. I'll get back to you." 30 a.m. morning. Who would be banging on the door so early? I woke Dan, who threw on a robe and staggered to the door. The police opened up. I heard that, which answered my question, but why were they here so early? As soon as Dan opened the door, several large officers entered. 2 of them threw Dan against the wall and handcuffed him. 2 officers approached me in bed. One looked down at me and asked, "Are you Kay, McKnight?" I replied, "Yes." I was still groggy when I was told I was under arrest. I was arrested for conspiracy to commit liquidation and violating federal laws regarding the illegal sale of controlled substances. I asked if I could at least get dressed, pointing out that I wasn't yet. The officer in charge pointed to 2 female officers who pulled something decent from the closet. The male officers turned away as the women handed me jeans, socks, underwear, and a t-shirt. I quickly got dressed and they handcuffed me after reading my Miranda rights. Dan had already left. "What about my phone?" I asked. One female officer took it from the dresser and put it in her pocket. They led me out and put me in the back seat of a police car. The officer with my phone sat beside me, and another sat in the front. We went to the station, where I was processed. I asked if I could take a photo and if I could make a phone call. The officer pointed to the desk phone and said, "Can I use my phone?" I asked again and was told that I could use the one on the desk. I had to think for a moment to remember Shane's number. He answered after the second ring, sounding angry. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What happened?" "This is what happens when you plot to liquidate your husband and kids. Oh, by the way, they arrested your partner this morning." "No, I thought Max said we wouldn't get caught." "Please, Shane, I need help." "Maybe you'll get it in jail until then." "Screw you." He hung up, leaving me staring at the phone. I handed it back to the officer. "How long am I going to be here? Can I?" Once I posted bail, I asked the officer how long I'd be in custody. He said I was being held pending extradition to Pittsburgh. I was pretty shocked. "What about Dan King?" The officer checked his computer. It turned out that Mr. King was being extradited for federal charges in Columbus. I thought I was sunk. The officer took me to my cell and I sat on the cold, hard concrete seat, staring at the walls. I was shocked at how I had fallen far and fast. I finished talking to Kay and laughed. I couldn't believe her audacity. She had expected my help after plotting to eliminate me and the boys. She could rot in jail. I hated her more than anyone or anything in my life. She had nerve. We pulled up to my house and went inside. I checked Kay's phone for any new activity. There was nothing. I called the hotel, explained the situation, and arranged to have her things packed and sent home. Then we sat in the living room and I turned on the TV. Peter's phone rang and he left the room for a few minutes. When he returned, I switched to the local news channel. There was a reporter standing outside an apartment building. It was Captain Alfred McGregor, a highly decorated police officer. The officer was shot and killed early this morning during an arrest related to a conspiracy to sell stolen prescription pills. The reporter said details are limited, but the police chief will hold a press conference later today. My phone rang. It was Bill. He asked if I'd seen the news. I said I had. He then asked what happened. I told him. McGregor opened the door and started shooting. The officers returned fire and I took him down, so I'm safe now. Let's be cautious. I'd like Peter to stay with you for the week. I don't think McGregor had anyone else after you, but better safe than sorry. Sounds good to me. Have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, I said, ending the call. I looked at Peter. Looks like you're staying here for the week. Need anything? No, I'm good, he said. I sighed in relief. Later that after dinner, Peter and I went to see the boys. I told them about what had happened that day. John asked, "Is Mom going to jail?" "It looks like it," I replied. "She'll probably be in there for a long time." John fell silent. I knew that being a single parent with their mother in prison would be tough, but I was grateful for the support of my relatives. The rest of the week passed quickly. On Wednesday, Marion informed me that Kay had been. I found out that Kay had returned to Pittsburgh and that her court hearing was set for Thursday. I made sure to be at the courthouse. I watched as Kay, in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, was led in. The judge ordered her to be detained without bail. She sobbed as she was let out. Her attorney asked if I could bring the boys to visit her. I told him they didn't want to see her. Marion said the divorce papers were ready. I was asked if I wanted to be present when they were served, and I said I did. I met my friend at the jail. Kay was brought to the visiting area, still shackled. She looked up at me and smiled weakly. I just stared at her. My friend approached and asked if she was Kay McNulty. She said she was. He handed her the papers and stepped back. She began sobbing as she read them. Normally, I would have comforted her, but I didn't. I stepped forward and held out a pen, pointing to the papers. I said, "Don't I get anything?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Not a chance. You won't need anything where you're going." Can I at least see the boys? They don't want to see you. To them, you're dead. And, speaking of dead, your partner was eliminated during the arrest. I heard. Please, Shane. Forgive me. No, I loved you. After more than 13 years, I've had enough. You've lied to me, cheated on me, and denied me the chance to have children of my own. I'm not going to forgive you. Sign the divorce papers. She picked up the pen and signed the papers when she finished. I handed them to my friend, who thanked me and said he'd return them to Mrs. Hawkins and file them with the court. Kay, what did she ask next? Why did you do it? Shrug. I don't know. I wanted to, and I could. And look where that got you. You're in serious trouble, but it's not my problem anymore. I glanced around the gloomy room. You know, I have a feeling you're going to die behind walls like these. And you know what? No, Shane. Tears welling up. I can't wait to piss. In the movie On Your Grave, when she asked, "On your grave when you do," I replied, echoing her earlier words. She started sobbing, but I didn't care. I had one last thing for me and the boys. I added what she asked, looking more whimsical than ever. I raised both middle fingers and said, "Screw you," which... I turned away and heard her sobbing uncontrollably as I walked out. Too bad. Kay's liquidation for hire trial went quickly, given the boys were also caught up in it. She got 25 years to life, and the federal pill investigation went on for months, resulting in an additional life sentence. Dan was also sentenced to life. My boys and I moved on. They never wanted to visit their mother, so I respected their wishes. Cliff and Julie visited their daughter every month. It took time to adjust to being a single parent, but Cliff and Julie helped a lot. Julie encouraged me to find someone nice, but I wasn't ready to trust or love again after what Kay had done. However, a couple of weeks after she signed the divorce papers, I had a vasectomy reversal, even though the doctor said it might take a while before I could father children. A few weeks later, Marin contacted me with something important. I asked her to come by my office, and she said, she arrived with a bottle of champagne and poured 2 glasses. She handed me one along with an envelope. When I opened it, I found a check for $5 million, signed by Dr. Winstead. I was shocked, so I asked how on earth he'd managed that. I'd convinced Dr. Winstead that it was in his best interest to settle. I pointed out that his wife would likely want to make his life difficult in the divorce, and the damage to his reputation. He decided to settle rather than explain why he forced you to undergo an unnecessary procedure. I said, "Never get on my bad side." She laughed. "That's your after-tax profit. He also paid all your fees and expenses. He must be very rich." I said, "He is." She said, "Last year he gave more to charity than this settlement." She raised her glass, and I joined her. I was exiled from women for 5 years. Then I met Lori Reynolds, who was one of John's teachers. Like me, she was a single parent and divorced. She was wary of relationships, but we dated for a year before I proposed. She said yes, and a few months later, we got married. About a year after that, she gave birth to our daughter, Sarah Jane. I held her for the first time, and tears filled my eyes. Lori hugged me tightly. I called the boys and their grandparents into the room and introduced Sarah Jane, who they immediately adored. While they were doing that, I moved on to Kay's life. It got worse a few months later when she was diagnosed with HIV and separated from the other inmates. She died of AIDS about 13 years later and was buried in Potter's Field with only a simple plaque. I wanted to keep my promise to pee on her grave, but Lori convinced me otherwise. She said, "Come sit with me on the back porch." She poured me a cup of chamomile tea. "Shane, I know how hard it was to get over what Kay did, but you have to let it go and move forward. It's hard and it still hurts." I said, "I know." She said, "If I thought it would help, I'd go with you and piss on her grave. You know that, right?" "Yes," I said. "But now she's..." Lori said, "She's gone and she can never hurt you again. Kay suffered from AIDS almost as long as your marriage. She died alone, unloved, and forgotten. She paid the ultimate price. What more can you do?" I had to admit she was right. "Have you told the boys?" "They're in college now. I told JN and Robert at first. They thought I meant you. Then they realized it was about their mother." "How did they take it?" "They didn't seem to care." "What does that tell you?" She asked if they'd moved on with their lives. She said so, and so should you. You've been a great husband and father. You loved and raised John and Robert, even after learning you weren't their biological father. You adopted Mark and raised him too. "He's a good boy," I said. "Thanks to you," she said. "He sees you as his father." We watched Sarah playing in the yard. "Didn't Kay want that guy, Dan, to give her one too?" Lori asked, her daughter. I replied, "It felt like ages since that Friday night. Think about it. If she hadn't been so greedy, you could have had a daughter with her, and Sarah wouldn't exist." She was right. I kissed Lori just then. Sarah ran to us with a white flower. "Daddy, look what I have for you," she said. "Thank you, dear," I said. Lori asked, "That one over there?" Sarah said, pointing. We saw nothing. Goosebumps ran down my spine. "What else did she say?" Lori asked. "She said she's sorry for everything and wants you to forgive her," Sarah said, looking at me. I saw the vegetation swaying as if touched by a light breeze. A sudden gust of cold air came and went. I looked at Lori, tears in my eyes, and nodded. "It's time," I said. I knew it was the hardest thing. Lori smiled, and Sarah hugged me. I whispered, "I forgive you," looking up. Sarah hugged me tighter and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Daddy," she said, "thank you," and ran back into the yard. I looked at Lori, wondering what had happened. She smiled and kissed me. I felt happier and more content than I had in a long time, as if a huge weight had been lifted. Maybe I thought happiness is the best revenge.